You've been seeing someone for a while. At first, everything flows beautifully. They're present. They text back quickly. They even surprise you with little gestures that make you feel wanted. You think, finally, someone who gets me. But then, almost without warning, things shift. You share something vulnerable. Maybe you hint at wanting more commitment. Instead of leaning in, they lean out. Suddenly the texts become shorter. The plans are vague. The warmth you felt in the beginning turns into something distant, confusing, almost cold. And you're left asking yourself, what did I do wrong? This is the painful cycle so many people experience when loving someone with an avoidant attachment style. It feels personal. It feels like rejection. It feels like the closer you reach, the further they slip away. But here's the truth I want you to hold on to from the very beginning. It's not about your worth. Avoidants don't push you away because you're unlovable. They push you away because closeness stirs up something deeply uncomfortable inside them, something rooted in early experiences of love, safety, and connection. Why closeness feels dangerous? Let's break this down. People with avoidant attachment didn't just wake up one day and decide, I don't want intimacy. This pattern was often shaped in childhood. Maybe they grew up in a home where vulnerability was met with dismissal. Stop crying, you're fine. Maybe their emotional needs were consistently unmet, or they were told, directly or indirectly, that needing too much made them a burden. Over time, the child learns a painful lesson. If I want to survive, I have to rely on myself. I can't risk depending on others. Fast forward into adulthood. On the surface, an avoidant might look independent, even confident. But deep down, closeness feels dangerous. Why? Because intimacy awakens the very fear they've worked so hard to avoid that if they let themselves truly need someone, they'll end up disappointed, abandoned, or engulfed. So, when you get close, their alarm bells go off. They don't think about it consciously. It's automatic. Their nervous system says, retreat. Let me tell you about Emma and Daniel. Emma loved openly. She wore her heart on her sleeve, always ready to share her feelings. Daniel, on the other hand, was deeply avoidant, though Emma didn't know this in the beginning. In the early weeks, Daniel was attentive, charming, and even affectionate. Emma thought, this could be something real. But when she brought up the idea of introducing him to her family, Daniel froze. Suddenly, he became busy all the time. His texts grew shorter, his voice over the phone flatter. Emma felt like she was chasing a ghost. She asked herself over and over, did I come on too strong? Did I say the wrong thing? But the reality was this. Emma hadn't done anything wrong. What scared Daniel wasn't Emma. It was the weight of intimacy itself. The moment their bond threatened to feel too real, Daniel's old defenses rose up. Pulling away wasn't about Emma. It was about protecting himself from the old wound of needing and not receiving. The hard truth about avoidant distance. Here's the hardest part to accept. When an avoidant pushes you away, it often has very little to do with you. It's not that you were too much. It's not that you weren't enough. It's that closeness stirs their deepest fear of vulnerability. And while this can feel deeply personal, understanding this truth is the first step to healing, whether that means finding new ways to relate to them or realizing you need to protect your own heart. Reflection. Question for you. I want you to pause here and ask yourself, have I ever taken someone's distance as proof that I was unworthy? If the answer is yes, you're not alone. So many of us tie our self-worth to how others respond to our love. But when it comes to avoidance, their pulling away isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their internal battle. So now that we've laid the foundation, why avoidants pull away when things get close, let's step into the dance itself. Because that's what it often feels like, doesn't it? A confusing push and pull rhythm where one moment you're being pulled in, and the next you're being pushed out. The subtle shifts you notice first. At first, everything feels warm. They're engaged, curious about you, even affectionate. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the air begins to change. They start texting less frequently. They seem distracted when you're together. Plans become vague. Maybe later, instead of, let's do this Friday. The small acts of affection, like reaching for your hand or sending a thoughtful message, become rare. It's not that they've stopped caring, it's that their internal alarm system has been triggered. The closer you get, the more their mind whispers, this might not be safe. I need space. And the heartbreaking part? For you, this shift feels like rejection. It feels like they've lost interest, like they're pulling away because of you. But for them, it's not about lack of love. It's about fear of losing themselves in the love. A story, Michael and Sophia. Let's take another story here. Sophia adored Michael. He was kind, intelligent, and she could see glimpses of how deeply he cared. When they first started dating, Michael was incredibly attentive. He'd call her every night, bring her little gifts, and ask questions that made her feel truly seen. But as soon as Sophia started opening up about her deeper hopes for the relationship, talking about moving in together someday, Michael changed. He didn't argue. He didn't fight. Instead, he quietly stepped back. The phone calls stopped. His replies came hours later. When she asked if he was okay, he simply said, "I've just been busy." Sophia felt crushed. She thought she had scared him away by being too forward. But the truth was Michael's avoidant wiring had been activated. What Sophia experienced as abandonment, Michael experienced as survival. Pulling away felt safer to him than staying close. The cycle that keeps repeating. Here's what often happens next, and maybe this will sound familiar. The avoidant pulls back. You sense the distance, so you lean in. You send the longer texts. You try harder to reconnect. You ask, "What's wrong? Did I do something?" But the more you reach, the more they retreat. Because to an avoidant, your pursuit doesn't feel like love. It feels like pressure. It confirms their deepest fear that intimacy means losing their autonomy. So now you're stuck in a painful loop. The harder you try to close the gap, the more they push you away. And the more they push you away, the more desperate you feel to bring them back. Sound familiar? Why this dynamic hurts so much? The tragedy of this cycle is that both people are hurting. You hurt because you feel abandoned. They hurt because closeness triggers old wounds they don't know how to face. But the difference is that you often turn the pain inward, blaming yourself. I wasn't enough. I loved too much. I ruined it. While the avoidant turns the pain outward, retreating into distance as their shield. This mismatch creates a heartbreak that feels one-sided, but really it's two different nervous systems trying to protect themselves in opposite ways. A gentle reframe. I want you to take this in. When they pull away, it's not proof that you're too much. When they retreat, it's not a sign that you're unworthy. It's their internal battle between longing for connection and fearing it. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing hurtful behavior. It doesn't mean tolerating neglect or silence. But it does mean you stop internalizing their distance as a reflection of your value. The lesson hidden in the distance. Here's the paradox. Avoidants push you away, not because they don't care, but because caring so deeply terrifies them. Their pulling away is less about rejection and more about survival. And while you can't control their patterns, you can control how you respond. Instead of chasing, instead of proving, instead of collapsing into self-blame, you can choose presence. You can choose to hold your ground, honor your needs, and not lose yourself in their retreat. We've talked about why avoidants pull away. We've looked at the push and pull dance. And now it's time to go deeper, to the fear that drives it all. and the ways you can begin to reclaim your peace. The fear avoidants don't speak out loud. At the heart of avoidant attachment lies one unspoken fear. If I let you get too close, I'll either lose myself or you'll leave me anyway. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? On one hand, they're terrified of being engulfed, of being smothered by your needs until they vanish. On the other hand, they're equally terrified of abandonment, of opening up, becoming vulnerable, and then being left behind. So what do? They build walls, walls of distance, silence, distraction. Not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. A story. Daniel and Emily. Emily once told me about her relationship with Daniel. He was warm, funny, and deeply thoughtful, but also deeply avoidant. When they first started dating, Daniel surprised her with little acts of kindness. Playlists he made for her. Late-night talks where he let his guard down just enough for her to feel close. Emily thought, this is it. This is real. But as soon as the relationship began to deepen, when Emily started talking about future plans, meeting families, building something lasting, Daniel retreated. He stopped sharing, stopped showing up in the same way. He didn't break up with her. He didn't explain. He just pulled away, leaving Emily in the silence. And here's the thing. Daniel wasn't trying to punish her. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was trying to protect himself. But in doing so, he left Emily hurting, questioning her worth, and wondering what she had done wrong. This is the paradox of avoidant love. In trying to avoid pain, they create the very pain they fear. What to do with the distance? So what do you do when someone you love is caught in this avoidant cycle? Here are a few truths I've seen help people shift this dynamic while protecting their own heart. Stop chasing. The more you pursue, the more they retreat. Instead of trying to close the gap, allow the distance to speak for itself. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop overfunctioning for the relationship. Anchor into your worth. Their withdrawal is not a verdict on your value. The moment you stop seeing their silence as proof that you're unlovable, you take back your power. Hold space without collapsing. You don't have to punish them, but you also don't have to beg. You can let your boundaries speak. I care about us, but I won't lose myself waiting for you to show up. Recognize the apologies that aren't words. Sometimes avoidants won't say, I'm sorry, but they might fix something broken in your home, check in quietly, or send a simple message that says, I've been thinking of you. These are their ways of re-entering. You get to decide if that's enough for you. The healing lesson hidden here. The truth is, you can't heal an avoidant by loving them harder. You can't melt their defenses by proving your loyalty. Healing in this dynamic begins with you, anchoring in your own clarity, your own boundaries, your own self-worth. And here's the secret. When you stop chasing, when you stop pleading, when you stop making their love the measure of your worth, you create the very safety they need to reflect. You stop being part of the cycle, and you become the stillness that makes them finally feel the emptiness of the distance they created. That's often the moment an avoidant begins to shift. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. The closing thought. So if you've ever wondered why someone who cares about you pushes you away just when you're about to feel safe, remember this. It's not your fault. Their fear is theirs to face. Your healing is yours to honor. Don't lose yourself trying to hold on. Don't shrink yourself to keep the peace. The most powerful thing you can do is stand in your truth, anchored in your worth, and let your boundaries speak louder than your begging ever could. And if the avoidant comes back with a true apology, or with a quiet gesture of care, you'll know it came not from pressure, but from choice. And that makes it real, because real love isn't about chasing or clinging. It's about being seen, respected, and safe to be who you are. And that's what you deserve.